Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Thomas's Reading Room. We are going to start with Trip Across the Pond today in Chapter 5, Bendong Island and the Saigon Docks. Okay, we'll go rather quickly here. The time came to leave Camp Bearcat. A group of us drivers that were put on the list climbed into the back of a covered deuce and a half, and we made our way through 2 villages, 6 miles to Long Bend. From Long Bend, we got onto the main highway and headed north to Saigon. We went across a bridge onto an island and stopped at a large building called the Rice Mill. It would be our home for the next 21 days. We unloaded our footlockers and walked inside, observing the inside area. The building seemed even larger than looking at it from the outside. There was one large room, big enough to park 10 deuce and a halves, with cots and a few footlockers placed in front of them. Mike and I found 2 unoccupied cots next to each other. We set the footlockers down in front of them, then checked the place out. There was one large area where everyone slept, of course, a latrine with showers, mess hall, a small bar room with a jukebox, and a couple of slot machines. The jukebox had 2 songs on it. One was The Yellow Rose of Texas, the other was Green, Green Grass at Home. Good songs, and I like to play them on the guitar now and then. However, it would not take too long for me to get tired of hearing them. Mike and I sat on our footlockers and bullshitted as we waited to find out what the hell we were going to do. Nothing unusual about having to wait for a few hours. That was the Army way. Mike kept me entertained, as he often did, by constantly making fun of everything. I had a little nourishment in the footlocker, whiskey, and we enjoyed a few pulls. It became obvious to me by now that Mike was not a real drinker. It was not unusual for me to take a couple of extra pulls to his one. Finally, we learned that someone had fucked up. Nothing unusual. It happened regularly. We would go back to Camp Bearcat and then come back to Saigon in 3 days. I learned later that the reason everything was so fucked up was because the fucking longshoresmen had gone on strike. Damn, that was hard for me to conceive. The fucking longshoremen had gone on strike. Here we were in the middle of a war, or whatever the hell you want to call it, and the complete division moved to a hill where the top of it had been shaved off. We had to build our own camp, our own place to sleep, and the equipment to fight the enemy with was sitting on ships at the Saigon docks waiting to be unloaded, and they cannot because the damn longshoremen decided to go on strike. Somehow, that was supposed to be okay. Oh shit! Where the hell was the president then, I thought. The railroads could never get away with a strike for more than a few hours without the president stepping in. The Americans, working like their heads were cut off, set up rooms at the dock to teach the Vietnamese how to unload the ships. That seemed like America in itself. It seemed that the whole Vietnam affair was a great degree of bullshit, and perhaps the best thing would be to go back to the United States, then have the Air Force bomb the fuck out of that overgrown swamp. We went back to Camp Bearcat, and I was chosen, the company commander liked me, to pull broom guard 2 nights in a row. There was not much time to do anything. Instead of hanging out at the web talk where the mechanics slept, I stayed one day at the web talk where the commo, cooks, clerks, and whoever else stayed. I enjoyed many of those soldiers, and of course Robert Kelly, who also was there. I always liked listening to Robert, as he always seemed so damn funny. The next morning we headed out again for Saigon, Bendong Island. It was sure would be good if Robert Kelly could go, though someone had to take care of the radios. Moving through Saigon in the back of a deuce and a half, we could not see too much, although we saw a flood of people as we passed by them. Some were riding bicycles, some riding scooters, and others were driving cars and trucks, though not too many trucks. One car, that I've seen few of, was made by the French. It looked similar to a 1932 Ford Victoria sedan. Every one of them was black in color. Could it be that at one time the French only had black paint? Another car that simply amazed me was a 1937 Ford convertible, as far as I could tell. It was in mint condition and painted a canary yellow. During the time spent in Saigon, I observed 5 or 6 of these cars. A few Vietnamese women were walking along the side of a narrow road that we were going down. Some of them were wearing black on black, and others were wearing white on black. The driver of the deuce and a half had slowed, then shifted. black suit went out of the exhaust pipe and covered the women from the waist up. Now they were all wearing black on black. At the rice mill, Mike and I took our foot lockers. I bought the guitar and a harmonica and found two empty cots next to each other. I learned the United States was renting the rice mill from the French, and it had been occupied mainly by Mac-5. How much we were paying, I do not know. However, I'm sure that it was plenty. The French played a dual role in the Vietnam War. They worked with North Vietnam, South Vietnam, and the United States simultaneously. The United States paid rent not only for the rice mill. We rented the Michelin rubber plantation near Dao Tiang. It was said to be the largest rubber plantation in the world. The United States paid the French $250 for each rubber tree that had been destroyed or scratched. Here was the finale. France owed the United States $80 billion, and in 1968, de Gaulle kicked the United States base camp out of the country. Forgive me, France. However, I thought it noteworthy. After showering 4 or 5 times, a group of us bunked out for the evening. The sergeant in charge had told us we would go to work at the Saigon docks from 6 in the evening to 6 in the morning for the next 21 days. The next morning, Mike and I headed out to a tour of Bandung Island. It was surrounded by water, and should memory serve me, there was only one bridge connecting the island with Saigon. The bridge was constructed from wood and had a slight arch to it. It was narrow and perhaps 150 feet long. We observed a few houses or huts made of wood or tin with bamboo roofs, and the floors were dirt. Outside the houses or huts, there was a tripod with a pot hanging from the apex. Underneath the pot, on the ground, was charcoal. I told Mike, not like having an outdoor kitchen. When it would rain, the Vietnamese would collect water from the puddles in the road to use for cooking and drinking. I thought the island in Saigon had a strange smell that I would not get used to. It definitely had a smell that would take a reasonable person some time to accept. As we walked along, perspiring, we took in another sight that seemed noteworthy. There was a wood plank wide enough to walk on that led to a wooden platform, perhaps 3 planks wide. The wooden platform went parallel with the shore's edge. Mike and I wondered what it was used for. At a later time, I observed a Vietnamese person walk out onto the wooden platform, squat, and execute a shit. Another time, when observing a similar execution, there was a Vietnamese boy swimming close to the area, thinking to himself, wow, the biggest cesspool in the world, and people even swim in it. Mike and I rode to the entrance way of the rice mill and stopped at a bomb stand where we bought a Vietnamese beer. They also sold good old Coca-Cola. About 5 in the evening, we drivers loaded into a deuce and a half and went across the city of Saigon to the Saigon docks. There came the thought, that was convenient. Why should we be close to the docks? Let's stay as far away as we can. That way we can waste more time going there and coming back. The Saigon docks were interesting to me. Everyone was busy. People running here and there. Tractors going somewhere, carrying goods of some kind, lift trucks, hauling soda and beer. Beer? Mike, let's see what we can do to supply ourselves. No problem, laddie boy. I'll take care of that, Mike chuckled. There was a bomb stand where we could get something to eat. Often Mike and I would purchase large cans of chocolate drink. It tasted a bit strange to me, and I do not recall ever seeing it in the United States. However, both Mike and I liked it. Many nights Mike and I laid out in the wooden seat in the back of the deuce and a half. The canvas had been removed. The tropical nights seemed so mysterious, so full of charm. The temperature was usually 95 to 100 degrees, and I simply fell in love with those evenings. The first night we drove 2 convoys to Long Binh, and the second night we drove 2 more convoys. The third night a sergeant was asking for soldiers that knew how to drive personal carriers, tanks. Tom, let's try some personal carriers and tanks, Mike said with his usual grin and gleaming eyes. We don't know how to drive them, I replied. That's okay, Tom, my boy. We can drive them. Come on. Mike and I went over to where a sergeant who was in charge and a group of soldiers was and raised our hands. Both Mike and I drove a personnel carrier, and there was nothing to it. When you wanted to turn left, you pulled the left lever back. When you wanted to turn to the right, you would pull the right lever back. Mike and I had a hell of a good time driving those personal carriers, and the tanks were even more enjoyable. That was the last evening any of us drove convoys. We never knew why. However, Mike and I and everyone we came with went to the docks each night. Some of us stood as guards, and the others I had not an idea. There was much stealing going on at the docks, not only by the Vietnamese, but our own kind also. The Vietnamese would be unloading, let's say, 100 cases of Coca-Cola. When he lowered the cases about halfway to the dock, he would let them fall, and cans would go everywhere. It would be a short time, and much of those cans would have vanished. One night, Mike and I were standing around, bullshitting, and there was a round in the chamber of my M16. However, it was not all the way to the chamber. There was a gizmo on one side where you could push in the round. Fortunately, the rifle was pointing to the ground when pushing the gizmo, and the bullet went off. It smashed into the cobblestone, and a piece of cobblestone flew up and hit Mike with the forehead. Mike's forehead bled an insignificant amount of blood, then stopped. Looking around, there was only Mike and me. The rest of the people had vanished. It was as if time had stopped. Nothing was moving. Neither Mike nor I had experienced anything like it. Nothing came of it, and the only people who knew what really happened were Mike and me. The days in Saigon were extremely interesting and well spent. There were many Vietnamese kids hanging around the rice mill for handouts, chops, and Coca-Cola. The opportunity came for me to meet an outstanding young man by the name of John, although I gave him the name Sam. Sam was definitely different from any of the other kids. If you spoke to him when he was working, he would not acknowledge you. Somewhere, someone taught Sam that when you work, you work. You don't fool around, you get the job done. Sam and I came to like each other to a great degree. Even so, if I called to him when he was working, he would not acknowledge me. The entire time that Sam and I spent with each other, he never once asked me for anything. Not one damn thing, not one time. I admired him for that and enjoyed saying from time to time, "Sam, you want a Coke?" With a warm smile and a complete expression of innocence, he would say, "Okay." Sam showed me a picture of his mother, father, and their car parked in front of their house. It looked almost American. Sam said his father had a good job, a bookkeeper, and when the French came, his family was forced to separate. He had not seen his father in a few years and had not an idea where his father was or if his father was even alive. He thought his mother was somewhere over in the Saigon district. However, he did not know exactly. Sam told me he was staying with some people on the island. It seemed obvious to me that Sam would grow to be a very powerful person. There was a want to help him in every way, to give what I could, and one way was to pay for his schooling that year. Mike and I had the excellent opportunity to meet a Vietnamese soldier who was a tank driver in the South Vietnam Army. He gave Mike and me an original tank driver's beret. It was black with a picture of a tank made from chrome-looking material on the front side. That soldier was smart and a good soldier to boot. Mike and I would go to the PX in the Saigon district and purchase alcohol, chicken, meat, with our ration stamps, and give them to the soldier, excluding the alcohol. In turn, the soldier would let Mike and me use his motorcycle to putt around Saigon. It seemed that Mike and I did not have a harmful bone in our body, and we met and made friends with many people, although we kept to ourselves also. Sometimes Mike and I would walk to and over the bridge to catch a taxi. The taxi was a motorcycle with a seat and a wheel on each side of it, sitting at the front part of the motorcycle. I would give the driver more money than was requested if he would promise to go plenty fast. Although Mike did not usually drink much, I did, and that seemed to give the ride an extra twist of excitement for me. We went downtown Saigon en route to the Capitol Hotel. The driver would come up to the back of cars and trucks so close that we could reach out and grab them. He would whip in and out of traffic, and when he braked, it seemed that we would not be able to stop in time. What a hell of a ride he gave, I thought. Not feeling any pain, the ride was terrific, though it still scared the hell out of me, a little bit. Not to forget Mike. He had been holding on for dear life the entire time. There was one time when Mike would not be joking and was still funny. At the Capitol Hotel, there was a bar upstairs where we could drink, and there was always Australians there. We and many other people called them limeys. We had our little ration stamps for liquor, and the drinks were dirt cheap. A grasshopper would cost 20 cents. There was a Vietnamese man who played the piano, and our one song he played and sang well was titled, "This Land is Your Land." I gave a salute to good old Woody Guthrie. The hotel had a buffet and was one of the few hotels that had American food. No offense given to other types of food. It was my experience of being food poisoned as a rice mill that told me to stay with good American food. After drinking, eating, and socializing with the Limeys, Mike and I left the hotel. We stopped at a shop, a hole in the wall, and held conversation with a pretty Vietnamese girl who spoke English to a degree. As we conversed with the girl, a boy standing at the curb with his penis out of his pants commenced to piss in the gutter. It was a new experience for both Mike and me, and we felt awkward being around the girl during the exhibition. Of course, the girl did not think anything of it. One other time, I observed a Vietnamese person downtown piss on a wall, and he was being artistic about it, making various designs. Another time, Mike and I took the Vietnamese tank driver's motorcycle to the Saigon district and shopped at the PX. When walking out of the courtyard, we observed some high-ranking officers standing in front of the gate leading out. I nudged Mike and told him to watch. We got close to the officers. I picked up our step and went, The officers jumped back. Both Mike and I acknowledged them as junior officers as we briskly walked past and out of the gate. Mike and I learned early not to wear patches or stripes. It would give away our rank and be a disadvantage. Once I went to the Saigon district alone and stumbled onto a house of prostitution. The women were Chinese and they pleased me. There was a medium-sized room and a papasan was laying in a hammock. There were various women sitting on a bench that went around the four walls. Papasan was positively stoned and the room reeked with the smell of Mary Jane. After choosing a woman that seemed attractive to me, we began to leave for a room when an American soldier came in. The woman's eyes lit up when she saw him. He was an old friend, and she wanted to serve that blue-eyed, blonde-haired American soldier. Although the American soldier was cool and motioned for her to go on. I always thought that it would be good to go back there. That woman knew how to make a man grow straight and tall. Everything taken care of, and the fee was less than $5. Much of the 21 days was spent either at the Capitol Hotel or in the house of prostitution. Once a group of we soldiers, four of us, got into a taxi, 1959-60 Renault Dauphine, and told the driver to take us to a house of prostitution. The driver apparently was having a difficult time finding such a place. He stopped, got out, and went into a store to see if someone knew of a place. We got tired of waiting, so we took the taxi and went looking for ourselves. After roaming around the streets of Saigon for a half hour, we stopped, got out of the taxi, and found a house of prostitution only 1 block away. After a period well spent, we went back to the rice mill by way of another taxi. It was late one morning and the sergeant told me to drive a 3/4-ton truck with a trailer to the Saigon docks. Apparently, he thought I knew how to get to the docks from the rice mill. In any event, he was wrong. There was not the slightest idea from Mike or me of how to get there, other than knowing the rice mill and the Saigon docks were on opposite sides of the city. Mike said he would go with me, so we headed out late in the afternoon. The main street of Saigon was full of traffic. We stopped off, and then sometimes it would be 10 minutes before we moved again. Then it would only be a few feet. Once I climbed on the hood, shook the hands, and did a dance. Everyone who looked seemed like they did not know whether to smile or keep a sober face. Mike was rolling over with laughter. It was soon necessary to get back into the driver's seat as the traffic had moved. Observing a road to the left, I turned, not having any idea where the road went. The road was dirt, and there was puddles of water every so often. Driving fast, we sped in front of a papasan and mamasan sitting by a tripod holding their dinner. The left front truck tire rolled through a puddle. We looked over at papasan and mamasan in time to see them looking at us. They and their dinner were covered with mud. Back somewhere, we felt sympathy, though it had been some time since we experienced something like that, and we howled with laughter. I drove onward, and strangely enough, we arrived at the docks safe and sound and on time. The next evening was the last evening we would be going to the docks, and the time we left was later than usual. The deuce and a half that took us soldiers had the canvas over the back part of the truck. As we were going through the streets of Saigon, the driver had made a right turn. Looking out the back of the deuce and a half, several we soldiers observed what we thought was a beautiful woman riding in a rickshaw propelled by bicyclists approximately a half block behind us. She wore long black hair that was pulled back, a long semi-dark dress, and had dark eyes. She looked so elegant, so reserved, as she sat in the rickshaw with her legs so carefully crossed. I thought, when a woman has it all, she does not have to say much. A few soldiers whistled at her, though in a way that was respectful. The woman did not move a muscle other than in her face as she gave a smile that was worth $1 million to all of us sitting in that deuce and a half. As long as I'm alive, there would be a clear picture back in the crevices of my subconscious brain of that woman sitting in the rickshaw. The next day, we packed up and put our footlockers in the deuce and a half. Holding on to my guitar, I bid Sam farewell, giving him a handshake that was difficult to let go. "May all the forces be with you, John," I said. John smiled, watched as I climbed into the back of the deuce and a half. He kept smiling as the deuce and a half pulled away and out of sight. John was having another person who came into his life slip out again. Although I entertained one consolation. Perhaps, through our friendship, he would be much stronger. I don't know how much time we have time for the letter. Okay. The letter here is, I've got approximately 310 days left in the armed forces here in Vietnam. Been doing a little riding around town. The place isn't worth a damn. I always said that, why don't they move the troops out and bomb this place? It would take about 5 years to move everything out of here. We've been have so much equipment and other numerous items that it's a disgrace. When I'm down at the docks in Saigon, I see cases and cases of beverages and beer covering off of the ships, and the Vietnamese compensate about 1/4 of it. To think that this has been going on for 7 years. One of our largest base camps is just about as big as Saigon. I'll say goodbye for now, and we'll write later. Love, Thomas. Thank you, and catch the next chapter, chapter 6, please.